How well can you stack your face? There are 3 levels of difficulty. Can you stack your face perfectly?
Now, let me show you how to do the entire game setup using physics. So at first, you want to insert a cube, right? So you want to insert a cube, and then you adjust the size. So for our case, basically it's a rectangle. And what you want to do is to move over to the inspector panel, and then you want to add a component on 3D physics, and you notice that in 3D physics, there are different collider boxes, collider shapes. So one is box, one is sphere as a ball, and then there's a capsule, right? And there's a capsule. So depending on the shape of the object that you are using, and for our case, it's a box collider. So I want to click on the box collider. So how do we know the collider is actually being applied to an object? So if you look at the scene panel, right, you notice that there is a green items box here, right? So let me adjust this. You can see this green box here. And you can adjust the size of the box according to the object. So if you are using the 3D model from Effect House, so every time when you apply a box collider, it kind of fits perfectly into the shape. But if you're importing an object from Blender or whatever, right, so you might want to adjust the size of the collider accordingly. And do note that for this particular game on the stacking, right, when the two objects are stacking on top of each other, it is actually sitting on the box collider and not on the object itself. Yeah. So this is the first thing that we want to do. All right, this is cube. And the next thing that we want to apply on top of the box collider is the rigid body, basically applying a gravity into the box. And notice what happened, right? So let me refresh that. So you see that the box kind of falls down because of the gravity, right? Now let me set up a static here and try to refresh this. You notice that now the box has stopped, and then if you uncheck this box, it goes down again. So let me check this, let me refresh this, and let me move up the cube to a higher level. Now, in order to control the movement, let me start with a screen tab, right? You can use whatever trigger that you want, but when doing the creation, I like to use screen tab. So basically, this is screen tab. You want to call this out by clicking this little button here. You want to get the aesthetic, right? So here is what happened, right? If you uncheck the value, and this is what happened, yeah? So you click screen tab, it goes down, right? Now, and if you want to control the movement, you can add in the wait for a second. Let's say wait for about 1 second, right? You want to reset the aesthetic. Yeah, you want to reset the aesthetic back to static again, and you want to set the position to the original position and see what happened. Yeah, so you click, and there you go. The next thing we want to do is to set a floor, or I call it all the barriers or the boundaries, and you want to keep all the items within the screen, because when you apply the rigid body, it tends to fall off and it goes forever, and if not, it bounces off the screen, right? And I try to, for our game effect, we want the face to stay within the boundary, right? And this is how we do this. So we want to add another cube, and this serves as a floor, right? I want to make it really big, right? So it's like 20 here, 20 here. So you see that there is a big floor hanging, right? Again, we want to apply a box collider here and see what happened as I click this. And you notice that now the box sits on top of the floor. So, as I mentioned, we want to set the boundaries. So apart from setting the floor, I would want to add another layer, which I call it the wall, right? The wall. And again, I expand this, right? I expand this, and I expand this. I move this forward a little bit. Again, I want to apply another box collider, right? So that it doesn't fall off the screen. And notice what happened, right? If you move this forward here, right? Let me just adjust this, all right? And you click and so on, right? So you adjust the wall according to your game specifications. So typically, I will have one on the left, one on the right, one at the back, and move the z-axis all the way back to about -50, and then you want to have one in front of the screen. Typically, I set it to about +20 or +25. Make sure that it bounces, and then it bounces back into the screen. Yeah? Right, so let me get this out of the way, right? And I try to add another cube here, right? And again, for this particular cube, when I click this, right, let me set this, yeah. So, and this is the second box. I want to set the cube, right? I want to set the cube here, uncheck the box here, wait for a second, right? Stack here, and again I want to set duplicating the same thing, right? This time I want this check, and for this particular cube, after about 1 second, it goes back to the same position, and see what happened. Yeah, so as I click this, okay, I forgotten to connect these two. Okay, so let me add a sequence. Yeah, let me add a sequence, right? And notice now that they are stacking with each other. Yeah, so this is how we set up the game, and now we will move on to another file which I have already pre-set up everything, and you can see all the game setup more clearly. Here is the file I have set up for this tutorial, and you'll notice a lot of different test indicator here, right? So notice there are two numbers here, basically calculating the distance between the bottom box and the mid box. Also on the middle box to the top box, we need these two to calculate the end score. I've also included a lot of the different kind of indicator as well to detect the collision, right? Let me show you, right? So if I click on an easy mode, you notice that this is moving, and as I trigger it, right, you notice that when two items are colliding, they will turn red, right? In this case here is the bottom box as well as the floor. Both turn red. So if I drop the second item, you notice that the mid box and the bottom box turns red. Basically, this is colliding with the bottom box, and we know we can basically pinpoint which objects are colliding, and this is the third one, right? And it is colliding with different items, and you see different type of colors coming out. Now also notice on this, I'll come to that part later on, but because we need this to calculate the score, right? So let me just reset all of this. Now let's go through the file. So in this file, which you can download for free in the link right below, and I've separated this and in different colors. All right, so let's go through the first one. The first one is the game setup. The game setup by setting the different difficulties, which is the easy, the normal, and the hard. Now, in this case here, what we want to do is to set up the screen, the 2D image, right? And make sure that when you are doing the screen image tab, you are using the 2D screen image rather than the 3D image, right? Screen tab only works on the 2D image, not the 3D image, right? So I have to repeat this, and this is important. Yeah. So another note that it's extremely useful for game setup is to set the variables, right? To set the variables. Now, in this case here, I have one on difficulty set time, right? So this is how you do this, right? You click the plus button, right? You just say, I show you how to do that. And I say test, right? So you have created one variable, and basically you want to click on this detail to change whatever data points that you want, right? So for our case here is numbers. So I will click this as number, right? And you see that, and then you want to call it out by clicking on this create notes on set items, right? If you want to get anything to call out, is basically this test, this small little button here, right? So we don't need this. Let me delete this. Okay, so I have this on difficulty set time notes here, and each of these different triggers a different timing, right, on the difficulty meaning that you see that the things are moving on top, right? I want to basically adjust and set the time on the different difficulty levels. So right, on the easy mode is 3 seconds, and then on the normal is 2 seconds, and on hard mode is 1 second. So basically you can see on different timing, right? Let me reset this, and on hard is moving faster, right? Yes, this is how you set that, right? And then you can basically see how I set up the rest. Like when I click on this, some visibility go off. Now this is playing basically start. You define this as when a trigger starts, the game starts, and when it reach a certain point, right, the game ends. So that you want to keep all other key triggers out of the time zone of the time limit. So let me give you an example. Now in my game, I'm using a eye blink, right? An eye blink. Now what you do not want to happen is that before someone start the game, and it's blinking, you can't control, right? And then the item starts falling down and so on. Now this is where you define this, right? So you only want to trigger the game start when any of this item it's clicked on to trigger the start, and when you click on the third time, right, and you want to define the is playing as unchecked this box as game end. Now this is how you stop any other trigger within this particular time. Yeah. So let me show you an example. As you notice, this is the trigger for the items to drop, right? Now you see that right now, right? You see that right now, as I click this, it is not doing anything. But as I click easy, right, I drop box and it start to drop. Yeah. Right. Once you define this, and this is the transit by time nodes that we are doing, right? On this transit by time nodes, basically control the movement of the object that I want to drop in the x-axis, right? So that's how you set it up, right? You move the starting point to the ending point, and then you want to ping pong. You want to loop like 900 and whatever time that you set, right? And notice here that on this difficulty time setting, right? So you want to include this into the different duration. So when any one of this button difficulty level is set, it automatically update, right? It automatically update the duration, yeah, of the game. Yeah, so let me start, so that is 3 seconds. If I click normal, you notice that now is 2 seconds, right? And then if I click hard, it goes to about 1 second. Yeah. Let me reset this. Stop this. Okay, now we move on to the next one. How do we control, right? How do we control the drops of the objects one by one in order? Now, in order to do this, again, you want to set up is playing or not, so that you can control when games stop, right? So you don't trigger any other things, right? And the nodes that we will be using is the counter nodes, right? Is the counter nodes. So this is the counter, and this is how you set that up. You want to have a counter, right? And you want to have a mod. Now, on this particular counter, pay attention to the from list, right? From list. And the 2, I set it to 99 times. So you can repeat this counter. It keep counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on until it reach 99. And basically, you control the number of click items, the order, to 3, because there's only 3 clicks. Click 1, it drop. Click second time, the middle drop. Click the third time, it drop the final time. And then the cycle repeats again. So you want to have the mod being connected to the switch, right? To the switch. And every time some trigger happens, and you see that this is what I've shown you from the earlier file, right? You want to set the position of the drop box, right, back to 0, right? Whatever we set it, and then the static, remember the static, you lose it and it goes down, right? Wait for certain hours, and then the second box will come in, right? The second box will come in, and upon the second click, the second items will fall. Now this is how you control the different items. So this is the first one. Notice that, right? Look at the number. You drop the second time, you see the number is changing, and the third time is changing, right? Now, as you see, once you drop the third item, this one is no longer moving. Why? Because of the is playing. I've set the whole game the game playing nodes. The is playing node is unchecked, so I stop any other triggers in game from in between. Yeah. Okay. So one thing I don't want to point out is the counter, right? So on this, by default, right, the value is set to 0, right? So the starting is whatever you put, right? Now what happened is that, if you take note of the hierarchy here on the asset panel, as you can see, right? This is box 1, box 2, and box 3. So I define this as the first one. So the first number 0 is actually on item number 1. And as I click, if I put this as 0, right? So as I click, right? So you see that, the items are not are dropping on the next one rather than the other one, right? So there are two ways of doing this, right? Number one is that you either set the from to -1 so that it goes accordingly, right? So let's do this, and then you are dropping one by one, or you rearrange your assets in a different order. Yeah. The next thing that I want to cover is the collision detection. So there is a new physics notes on version I think 2.8 onwards, right? So on 3 definitely is in there. So this is the collision event, right? So to have the collision detection, you want to include this node, and this is how you set it up. Right? Do you see this collider component? Now, what you want to do, take note of this, right? So when you click on this, I think by default is on transform, right? So when you come to collision event, remember I say that these items here, you want to include the box, right? Not the object itself. So in this case, it's actually the box, right? So it's actually the box. So this is the floor. Now, when you want to put an update on the start, connect it. And in terms of the event type, there are 3 different types. One is on enter, one is on stay, and one is on exit, right? You can play around with this. For our case, I want the detection to happen the minute they collide, right? So I click on enter, right? And you want to connect an if here, meaning that if collision is detected. Now, if that is true, now, this is very important. Again, it's a set variables. You define this here, right? And basically, this sets that this floor is being collided. And notice this. This is actually on the boolean, right? So let me check this off and check this off, right? So let me come back here again, right? Going through this slowly. Now, this is if function. If I hit the box, right? So I will set, basically it detects, and you want the value to check on this box. And the color, once upon the floor detection, you want the color of the floor to change to red, and wait for about 0.5 seconds. The color goes back to normal again. And then you, again, on these particular variables, you want to uncheck this. Basically, you define, right, what is checked, what is not checked, right, so that it repeats. Because if you don't close it or uncheck it, it will forever, because you trigger this on, it will forever stay on, right? But you want it to turn off. Yeah. So this is how you identify exactly which item is being collided. So you repeat the same thing for the box 1, box 2, and box 3. Again, you want to have this node here, as specified, and so we define that this box 1 is being checked, and these are the different triggers, right? These are the different triggers. And again, let me show you, right? So if I drop this, you can see, okay, let me just restart this. I click on easy. The first thing I want to do is the first box, and the bottom box is turned red. The floor is, it has turned red, and then the middle box, as it collide with the bottom box, both turn red, and then the final box, you see that only the middle and the top it's detected. Now, why is this important? We need this because we want to calculate the value. Did you see this? The result turns good, and basically this is how we need to identify what is colliding with what and what is the distance, right? So now we have all this set up. Let's go to score calculation, right? Now, here is the score calculation. Now, here's how we define what is good and what is bad. Notice that for this game, the scoring is based on the accuracy of how users stack the two phases. As you can see here, the three of these phases here are being stacked on top of each other, and we want to define what is the distance range. Now, in order to do that, what you want to do is this, right? So this is the end result. So you go to box number 1, come here, right? On the hierarchy panel, you click on the box here, and you want to call out the transform. Did you see this? You want this get transform, and you want to connect this to the word transform information, right? Let me repeat that. Go to transform and click this item, right? You connect this, and then, so here, is the distance. I want to calculate the distance between the first box and the second box, right? So I need these two items and connect to the word transform information, called out the word position, and I want to put a distance node, right? So just distance, right? This is where you get a distance, right? And you want to set this to vector 3, right? This is how you get this, yeah? Now, I have a data convert here, right? If you don't need the result here as you've seen at the bottom here, then you don't have to do this step. But since this is a tutorial, I want the numbers to show up. So I put a text here and I have a data convert. You can skip this part and go straight to here, yeah? Now, when you come to here, this is how we define. Let me start again and pay attention to the number here, right? On the first number. So if I click on easy again, if I drop the box, you notice that this is 0.4. And then if this is sitting on top, notice that it's about 4.82, right? So since it dropped 2 times, right, we have to do this for the bottom and at the middle and the top. So there are 2 numbers here. So, and since the perfect one is 4, right? It sits perfectly. The minimum is about 4 or in the region of 4, right? So the perfect score is 4 plus 4 is 8, right? Now this is where you set. This is where you set your tolerance level to the end result. For my case, I set the tolerance to 10. So 4 plus 4, so long as it's 4 less than 10, I will consider this as good. All right, if not, everything else is bad. Meaning it fall off very far, you know, then obviously once you add up the 2 numbers, right, it falls way off. Now, this is, if you want to set the game, I set it to 10 because I want to make the game more forgiving, right? So that it's not too difficult. But of course, you can set this to like 8.5 to make it really, really difficult, right? And nobody can score, right? So it's up to you how you want to adjust this. So if you want to make the game more difficult, you can put a 9, right? You can put a 9 and then it becomes really difficult, right? It becomes really difficult. So let me set this, right? So I drop this, notice this. Let me try to drop the second one like here. And drop the third one. As you can see, now it turns good, right? Both add up is 8.65, right? And I set it to 9. Yeah, maybe game the score of 9 could be better, right? But it's entirely up to you. Right, that's it. That's how the whole game is being set up. And this file is available for download anytime. Just click on the link below and you have all this here. So now this box here I didn't cover because these are the collision detection tests that you can use. I mean, if you do not want this, right, you can just totally skip all of this, meaning all these numbers, and so on, color and so on. I did this, I included this part just for the tutorial basis. Yeah, it's for tutorial for your ease of reference, right? So now, next, we're going to move on to how you create the face texture, right? The face texture and how you create the face asset. Right, so now since we are using the face mesh for the split face, you can actually download this asset from Effect House library. Note that it's actually on learning, on the learning page. Click on library. These are microjam projects. Click on the asset, and this is where you want to go, and you click this to download the face mesh. Right now we are on in Blender now. You want to import the asset. Once you downloaded the 3D face asset, you import it in, right? And this is where you are. Now I won't be covering in terms of the detail of the Blender, right? So do search up in YouTube on exactly how you do this, right? So I'm going to do this very quickly. Yeah, so once you are in this part here, what you want to do is to highlight whatever areas that you want to highlight, right? And then you want to cut out the area, right? So for this case, so let me just turn this to this mode, and this is how you do it. Now, say for example, you want this, so you hit P, the key on P to basically to separate this out. So, and you notice that there will be a second items being dropped. So then again, you want this part to be cut out. You just click P, click out. Now you have 3 different parts on the master items, right? So let me show you, this is the final product on how it looks like, right? So you have the, let me go back to the object mode. So you see that now I've cut out, right, the face mask in this particular area. Now, one thing that I want to call out is that now for this, usually for the face mask, I intend to add a modifier here, right? Add a modifier here, and that is the solidify, make it a bit thicker for the materials at the back here. Right, now this is about the 3D face mask. Now, what if you want to do a square, right? You want to do a square box and you want the face mask, right? The face mask to be on specific area, one face of a square box, right? On just like another 2 examples that I have shown earlier on. Now, in this case, you want to do a UV remap of the texture, right? So let me show you how I do that. And the first thing that you want to do is to note is basically to draw out the area. Now, when you download the 3D asset page, right, you get a guideline. You see this guideline on the square on the face, right? And you want to draw out the 3 different boxes. It really depends on how you want it to be, right? And this one is the square. If you want like 4 square or whatever way, or whatever way that you want to arrange it, and then you want to draw out the box, serving as the guideline, right? So now let me just insert a import, right? Import a FBX. Let me just click Shift A, do a cube, right? And then let me just scale this down, way down, right? Way down, right? And then you want to go into the edit mode, right? You press 3, click off this. You want to go to the material, basically select everything. We call this the base, right? I call this the base, right? And then you want to do just apply new materials just on this face. So you want to create new materials, right? So I call this the phase 1. face one, and I want to apply to this particular face. So I go to base color, I go to image, I open file, let me go to live streaming, I go to asset, I go to 3D, and I want to map this to this. Yeah, so I want to now notice that now you see that the by default face is actually upside down and is not according to what you are looking for. So what you need to do is to go over to UV editing, right? UV editing, right? I want to click here, highlight this. I want to rotate Y. Just move this. Okay, this is not the way. Okay, I rotate it upside down and make sure this is minus 90 degrees. I click G to move this, right? Or click G to move this, right? I can scale it down, and I want to click S and scale to this different angle. Yeah. So I have this being selected in this particular box and so on. Or obviously you want to adjust the size and so on, right? So now that's how you do that. That's how you map that, and you want to import this particular box, right? So this is how it looks like, right? This is how it looks like, right? So let me show you the bottom part, right? This is the bottom part, right? So let me go to UV editing. Right, go to UV editing, and then I just highlight in this area, so you can see that now it's being highlighted as such on this particular part, right? So this is my second box. Go to UV editing, then you can see that now it's being arranged in a different area for 3 different boxes. Yeah, that's how you do it, right? So now if you want to import all of this, right, you can just highlight, and then you file, click export into the FBX file, all right, or GLTF. Right, so now I'm going to show you how you can attach the face texture into the different items that we have. I'm just going to do like just one of them just to showcase, right? And the second one, just do one of them, right? So this one I do a mid box, right? And so obviously, you know, you want to include all of them into it, but I'm going to show you for the different assets what you're going to do, right? Okay, so now you want to go to mesh, right? And go over to the face, and this is where you get the 3D face binding mesh. Then you move over to the inspector panel, and then you want to click on the create face texture, right? So here you get your face texture, right? So let's go to the face bottom. Let me drag that into the asset panel so you can see. Now, right now it's all white. You go over to the material. It's being called as Lambert. And then you click on this material here, and you can see that now it's checker. And then you want to select your face texture, yeah? So right now it's a bit dark, right? It's a bit dark. Okay, so since this is the PBR material, so you can do this. I mean, it shows a bit dark, and for this you want to click on emissive. Again, do the same thing. You apply a face texture to the PBR material. Just wait for a while. Yeah, it's still dark. Yeah, there you go, because there's lagging because I'm recording. So you see that now the face texture is being applied on the PBR material. So the same goes to the square box, right? The square box. Let me pull this up, right? Let me turn off this face bottom. Let me adjust the size to about 0.3, 0.3, and 0.3, right? So again, in this part here, I've defined it to face. You want to work on just the face, right? So again, you apply the material, you add on your face texture, right? It's a bit dark. See that it's coming out right now, and then here it's emissive, and then you have your, there you go, right? So there you go. That's how you do the face texture, right, for the face split. Right, now, so this is the end of the tutorial walkthrough, right? And let me know if you have any question, and just drop down your question in the comments below, and I will try to respond as fast as I could.